Welcome, everyone. Sorry, I was just a few seconds too late there as we were just finishing our last webinar. We got one great webinar after another. And then once again, here we are with Sassy Gold, another great company that I've come to learn a lot about in recent months and especially over the last couple of years. Ian Fraser, the VP of Exploration, so excited to have you on here. Welcome, my good sir.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, everyone, as everyone's starting to come in here, what we're going to do is we're going to allow Ian to go through the presentation here so you can get a full in-depth understanding of what Sassy Gold has been up to and will be up to. On the right-hand side, though, very quickly, you'll see a chat function on there. I always love seeing where people are tuning into from your city, your province, or whatever country you're coming from. We'd love for you to use that chat function. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. But also the Q&A function, very important. You can put your questions in there. You can put them in now. You can put them in throughout the presentation or during the live Q&A. That's what we'll turn to for questions after this presentation has concluded. So I'll be turning off my mic and my camera now, Ian. I'll hand it over to yourself, and I'll come back on for when we're doing our questions here.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Well, welcome, everybody. As I was introduced, I am Ian Fraser. I'm the VP of Exploration of Sassy Gold. We're sassy, we think big, and we make things happen. Sorry here. So cautionary statements, everybody has seen these. There will probably be some forward statements made through this presentation. We'll be discussing two things. Our FOREMORE property in the SK Camp, northwestern BC, and the second property that we have in our portfolio, a uranium property in the prolific Athabasca Basin in northern Saskatchewan. So what's unique about the SK Camp is it is indeed a treasure chest of metals, dating back to the days of Murray Pezim. Tremendous discoveries have been made, and with discovery comes increased market cap. So one of the things that we feel as we are on the road to discovery, we can expect an ever-increasing market cap and get up to some of these other very, very attractive overall market caps of our peers within the SK Camp. Sassy, dynamic leadership led by our president and CEO, Mark Scott, good financial backing. We've put together a good exploration team, and with the addition of our second property, we can explore year-round, with this being the uranium property I mentioned in Saskatchewan. Still a very good tight share structure, and we definitely have some market savvy. As I mentioned, Mark Scott, our leadership starts at the top. The bottom right-hand side, Mike Milton's got to be one of the hardest working, most passionate prospectors I've ever met. He's got a real nose for finding mineralization, all types of mineralization, and in our case, gold and silver in the FOREMORE property. We also have the honor to work with Dr. Peter Lightfoot, brilliant scientist. I've had the pleasure of working with Peter on several projects, and indeed a tremendous access to the overall exploration team. And that's rounded out by Director Terry Coughlin and Director Kate McLaughlin. And we're also grateful to have the services of Roniker and McKenzie Geoscience. So the SK Camp, as I mentioned, it is indeed a treasure chest of metals. There have been historically some tremendous discoveries, and it seems like not a long period goes by where somebody else hasn't made yet another discovery. And with discovery, we're fortunate comes increased infrastructure. So there's now roads, there's now airstrips and power. It just recently added within the SK Camp. We also have the support of the Tahltan Nation, and they have been very, very supportive and cooperative and very, very active in our projects and all projects in the SK Camp. And it is a very tightly held. There's not a lot of available ground within the SK Camp, so we're fortunate to have a good chunk of it. Again, just speaking to the metal endowment, this slide you're looking at, it's a photograph of the Bruce Jack mine. But if you see down on the bottom, there was a report put out by Seabridge Mining, and what they've done is they've just sort of totaled up what is in the ground in terms of its endowment. So within the 8,500 square kilometers, there's 186 million ounces on the books in the SK camp, 958 million ounces of silver, 52.2 billion pounds of copper, and 1 billion pounds of molybdenum. So this is in situ. This is on the books. So again, it just speaks to this tremendous piece of geology and indeed a real treasure chest of metals, and just a tremendous place to be exploring. The FOREMORE project. So a lot of our effort since 2019 has been focused at WESTMORE, but it's also very, very important to point out that not only do we have this WESTMORE developing gold discovery, but there's also the potential for VMS type deposits within what we call the Moore Creek corridor and the SG Rhino lineament. We have VMS-like signatures there. And we also have very high-grade gold and silver mineralization associated with a contact at a dolomite and a fine-grained gabbro, essentially. And these are all off to the eastern side of the project in what we call the Hanging Valley. There has been some historic exploration here, but we have not put a tremendous focus yet ourselves on the eastern half of the project, the Hanging Valley, and we do plan to be doing a bit more work in the Moore Creek corridor as we go forward. So the FOREMORE project is 146 square kilometers. It's 100% owned by Sassy. We're located 45 kilometers north of the SK Creek mine. We're about a 25-minute helicopter ride straight west of Highway 37, near to the Bob Quinn airstrip. Again, just on the previous slide, I was talking about the various styles of mineralization on the project. But as I mentioned, also to date, our focus has been the discovery at WESTMORE and the golden discovery at WESTMORE. So this photograph is, what is helping us with our exploration is obviously this receding ice in the area, the receding glaciers. But I'd like to point out that the picture on the left-hand side, it does say summer 1985, but it's important to note that this was taken in June. With regular snowfall, we can't get on the property until July. But if you look at the glacier on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a yellow arrow pointing to WESTMORE, and just a little bit to the right is the toe showing. And this was something that was discovered in 2019. And then if you go back to the slide on the left-hand side, you can see as of 1985, the toe showing was completely under ice. So this receding ice has certainly aided in our exploration efforts, not only on this property, but in the SK camp as a whole. And yes, just speaking to the subject of receding ice, the WESTMORE granodiorite intrusive is the peak that you see on the right-hand side, and the toe showing is actually just off the right of this particular image. So highlights, again, just focusing on the WESTMORE gold discovery. Mike and his team was doing some prospecting in 2019. They discovered some very high-grade gold and silver in a mafic volcanic unit, quartz veins within a mafic volcanic that was sitting on top of the granodiorite intrusive. And it wasn't until we started prospecting in 2020 did we recognize that there was gold and silver mineralization in quartz veins within the granodiorite itself. So if we fast forward through to the end of 2021, which we continued the prospecting in 2020, as I mentioned, and in 2021 we did some more prospecting on the WESTMORE intrusive. overall, this granodiorite has a size of about 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. And drilling that we have done, if you consider the top of the WESTMORE intrusive and drilling holes to depth, we do have what is 400 meters of granodiorite, the WESTMORE intrusive, so it certainly remains open to depth. And the drilling and the prospecting, as you'll see in a subsequent slide, has confirmed that we do have high-grade gold and silver mineralization in these quartz veins that we have certainly prospected and seen on surface, and we have recognized with our drilling efforts to date as well. So one of the things that is unique about the gold mineralization at the WESTMORE intrusive is its association with galena. Now, I have seen galena with gold in previous projects, other projects I've worked on, but not to this extent. And what's unique about the galena is it's given us an opportunity to age date this galena. And we've done this at WESTMORE, and we have done this with galena at 2 other showings. And what the age dating has determined is that we do have 3 distinct mineralizing events. But what's important with respect to the WESTMORE is this galena and the age dating coincides with the very, very notable early Jurassic event. And that is inclusive of the Eskay Creek mine. So the age dating of galena at the Eskay Creek mine and the age dating of the galena at WESTMORE are one and the same. They are of the same time period. So that is confirmation of a very, very prolific mineralizing event. And we're fortunate that we do have this age of mineralization occurring on the FOREMORE property at, in particular, the WESTMORE. So I mentioned the prospecting. So what you're looking at here is a chart of our top 20. These are all surface grab samples. The prospecting efforts 2019 through to 2021 has resulted in 1,026 samples. If you take the overall average of those samples collected, you get 2.65 grams per ton AU. But cautionary statement here, this overall average is heavily skewed by these very, very high grade samples that you see in the top 20, but also inclusive within this, you can imagine there's also a lot of what I refer to as James Bond numbers and certainly a lot of gold values that fall below detection limits. So, but nonetheless, if you look at the overall average of our top 20, it's 80 grams per ton and a very, very healthy silver credit as well as at 555 grams per ton silver. So again, just emphasizing this high grade nature of these veins occurring within the WESTMORE intrusive. This particular image is a result of a VTEM survey that was flown recently over top of the FOREMORE property. We're looking specifically at the WESTMORE intrusive. We've utilized a derivative here to come up with what's called an edge effect. And essentially what this mag image is indicating, at least what I'm interpreting here, is the bright magenta is mapping the outside edge of the WESTMORE intrusive. And actually what's kind of cool about this image is if you look at the very northern part of the image, this is where the WESTMORE intrusive drops off very, very dramatically. So it's almost cliff-like. And you can see that the mapped edge, that is the pink shade that you see within the image, the mapped edge is corresponding beautifully with the edge of the edge effect of this mag image. So what this is telling me is, we've mapped it now a kilometer by a kilometer, but it is indeed a much bigger a feature as evidenced by what would appear to be the outside edge to the south and southeast. So it is a much bigger intrusive than 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer. And as I said, we've drilled it down to a depth of about 400 meters now, but it definitely remains open. The other interesting point here is you can see that the prospecting efforts have been pretty much dominated on the western side of the WESTMORE intrusive itself. And this is a function of this is where the exposure is its greatest. And over on the eastern side, This is a lot of overburden, a lot of talus cover, so not as well exposed. And the other interesting point is you can see a lot of the high-grade samples that have been collected on the western lobe also occur directly over top of a mag low, as evidenced by the blue color underneath. Now, if you look over onto the eastern side of the WESTMORE intrusive, you can see that there is a much larger area in blue, mag low, that unfortunately a lot of it is undercover, but potentially there, just to me, that is a very, very prospective ground to look for more of these high-grade quartz veins. So we have definitely, as our drill results of 2021, we are still waiting on the results for 2022. And once we have a chance to completely digest them, interpret them, we will release those to the public. But the drilling in 2021 does confirm that this high-grade nature that we see on surface does continue to depth, as evidenced by the high-grade intercepts on the left-hand side, 55.2, 86.4 grams a ton gold within intervals up to 2.2 meters, as evidenced by the gold colors that you see on the right-hand side. And furthermore, we have drill hole intercepts, as evidenced by the very bottom bullet, 4 grams per ton gold and 7.2 grams per ton silver was intersected within a broad zone of quartz veining and quartz stockwork over 28 meters that had an overall grade of 0.34. So these quartz veins are variable in size, and I think typically in these styles of deposits, they do open up, they do blow out in places, but it is very evident, particularly by this broad interval, that these veins are very, very auriferous, but in typical gold deposits, there will be pockets of much higher grade. The 22 drill hole, the drill program is where we placed our drill holes is evidenced by the image on the left-hand side. And I'd just like to point out the bottom 3 holes that you see. These are holes 36, 35, and 34. They were designed to intersect. You can see in this image that brighter color. Those are actual quartz veins immediately adjacent to the Moore Glacier. And these quartz veins do have thicknesses on surface. These are mapped and measured thicknesses up to 7.5 and 8 meters thick. And some channel sampling across these veins in 2021 did return gold grades up to 8 grams per ton in individual 1 meter samples across these quartz veins. And challenging, these 3 holes were all drilled from the same platform. We were drilling downhill into a steeply dipping quartz vein, which I think was actually dipping to the south, which just adds to the challenges drilling in this very, very rugged terrain. So I mentioned the Moore Creek corridor. This is a sort of a VMS type setting. We did do some drilling there in 2020. We do have intervals up to 8 meters that with a gold equivalent of about 4.5 grams. There's definitely zinc and silver and lead associated with this mineralization. We do get individual intercepts of higher grade gold further up the corridor in what's known as the Rider target. At depth, we do have significant intercepts. This is all in historical drilling. You can see, as evidenced by the gold values on the slide. We're currently continuing to interpret our 2021 VTEM data. We just recently received LiDAR data, which is all going to be very, very useful in doing a complete structural analysis within the Moore Creek corridor. And we certainly look forward to developing drill targets for 2023 to be drilled in the Moore Creek corridor. We've also talked about the Hanging Valley and the mineralization that occurs. Again, these contact styles of mineralization, again, galena being a very, very common denominator, but we have recognized high-grade gold and silver at the contact between this dolomite and gabbroic unit. But we really have not spent very much time out there. We need to a little bit more boots on the ground geology, a bit more mapping, continued prospecting. We're still scratching our heads as to what type of geophysical instrument might be helpful out in this part of the property. But again, just based on some of these historic grades, tremendous hunting ground. So on to uranium. So in this greening world and this greening economy, you know, the news is dominated by EV vehicles and lithium and nickel and copper and manganese and aluminum. And very, very quietly in the background, uranium is just chugging along and has come up from very, very low price levels, is now north of $50 a pound, and it will continue to go up, is what I think I'm confident in predicting. So we're fortunate to have a second property in a very good jurisdiction, the world famous Athabasca Basin in northern Saskatchewan. And this next slide gives you an idea of where it is. We're located 10 kilometers south of Cameco's Key Lake mine operations. The mine is no longer in operation, but the mill still is. You can see that there is what a graphitic conductor that comes from the Key Lake mine area south through the High Rock property. And what's important with respect to uranium exploration and these conductors is you want to be focused on areas where there's a kink, some sort of a structural deformation within this graphitic conductor. So you can see right at the very top of the High Rock property. Sorry, I should point out that this is not a basin hosted model. We are outside of the Athabasca Basin. We are outside of the sandbox here. We are in the basement rocks. So, and historic work here is along this particular kink that you see at the northern end. Gravity surveys have defined a broad zone of a gravity low, and gravity low in this type of exploration is generally what it picks out is areas of destruction where uranium fluids have altered the host rocks tremendously. So I think the historic work and the gravity surveys and some of the drill holes that have been drilled to date have definitely defined zones of alteration that one would hope for when looking for basement hosted uranium deposits. So we feel that this is a very, very strategic property. I've talked a little bit about the gravity low. It is a basement hosted deposit style of deposit that we are chasing, similar to NextGen's and Fission's properties. We're in very good company with Cameco and Fission 3 having the ground immediately staked around us. There was some drilling done in 2016. We ourselves drilled a couple of holes last winter with our JV partner. And unfortunately, it was a bit of there were some technical issues, but the second drill hole did intersect a very, very broad zone of bleaching and alteration. And we're looking forward to following up on that with some drilling in early 2023. So just to wrap this up, you know, one of the unique things about Sassy is its ownership in 3 other companies, that being Gander Gold, Galloper Gold, and Max Power. So this gives Sassy the opportunity to raise capital in a non-dilutive way by selling shares in these 3 other companies. These 3 other companies we feel are very, very good companies and certainly have tremendous upside. So this has given us, gives Sassy that leverage and that ability to raise capital without having to go to the market and further diluting the share base. Just a comment on the share structure. Fully diluted, we're about 81 million shares out. Warrants, you can see there's almost 5 million shares that would expire in January 28th. They're priced at 50 cents. So if we don't see that 50-cent price by the 28th of January, those will expire. and it would have an effect on the overall outstanding shares, bringing it down to roughly 75 million shares outstanding. So just to wrap up the management team, we've talked a little bit about that. Just add Sean McGrath and Richard Savage as directors and Chief Financial Officer. And I think I can wrap it up there, and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much there, Ian. I appreciate it. You know, as you know, Wes and I were boots on the ground at WESTMORE, and for investors who have seen some of those teaser videos, obviously we're going to have that full video coming out shortly as well. Seeing it in person is so incredible, and seeing what is actually there, and hearing the team, Mike Middleton, yourself, all of that. It truly has been an interesting moment for ourselves, especially seeing we've never been to a mountain like that so far up north. So that can't wait to share that part. But I appreciate your presentation there. And why don't we head right into the Q&A period here? We'll go straight from the very top here. This one is coming from Philip. What was your cost per meter of drilling this season?
Well, that's actually something we are very, very proud of. You know, I mentioned that the company, or excuse me, the property is helicopter access. So you have to get equipment from Highway 37 to our camp, Sassy Town, we call it. And of course, you have to get the drill, you have to get the fuel, and you have to get all the personnel. And here I have to give credit to Mike's team. We were able to, not only does Mike and team prospect, but they build the camp. So we have our own camp. We don't use a third-party source. So this is our camp. We own the equipment. Mike and his team, they also build all the drilling platforms. So all this is combined, and we had a very good operator this past season, and we were able to punch out a lot of meters, and it got our overall cost down below 600 meters, $600 a meter all in.
Wow. Yeah, I guess that leads to Elliot's question here. Just seeing that it's been upvoted to the top of the question list, and he was asking, how did your team drill the same amount this year as the last 2 years combined? And it sounds very much like it is the drill team and the team behind pushing them forward.
Exactly. Yes. We were very, very fortunate this year. It's been tough out there. There's been a lot of demand for drillers and drilling companies. There's no shortage of drills, but drilling is a skill. And we were very, very fortunate this past season to have just a world-class drilling team. And again, we put them in a very, very comfortable camp. We had a world-class cook, and a happy camp makes for happy drillers, makes for good production. So I think it was a combination of things, and that being part of it, but also their experience in the SK camp itself, I think was very, very advantageous to us, and certainly had a big effect on the production.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of production of those holes, we're going to continue with questions that are very drill related. How many holes were drilled at the lower end of WESTMORE?
Well, to date, at the very southern end of the intrusive, there's a cliff, and there's a very, very spectacular quartz stockwork system that's very, very visible from the air. We drilled in 2021, we drilled 3 holes. And this past season, we drilled an additional 6. So we have 9 holes in total now at the very lower end, the very southern part of the WESTMORE intrusive.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, like I said earlier, this goes with the next question as well from Bryce. A lot of that and all of that is captured in some incredible footage from over the summer, so that people can start having an understanding of what's being said in these decks and what you're talking about as well. Ian, you can be able to see this throughout this video, and which is the question: when will the full-length on-site documentary air, and will it? What will it and how within the video that investors haven't seen yet? Oh, well, I think it's saying what will it show in that video that investors haven't seen yet?
Well, I've been told that there is definitely going to be a real push in the new year just to continue to get the Sassy story out, and I suspect this video will complement that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think you've been to the property yourself, and I think you recognize the challenges working in that part of the of British Columbia, and certainly this part of the world. So I think, you know, the tremendous change in topography, the beauty just goes without saying. But you know, I think it's just the challenges involved, and the challenges to get equipment out there, to get people out there, to run programs efficiently as we have. I hope that message comes across, because it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and you're very right there. And for myself personally, just to help answer that question a little bit, as someone who had for the first time really seen boots in the ground operation like that, it's incredible. First off, just the visuals of seeing everything up there is absolutely remarkable. You know, you can't put it into words, but then to see how efficient the team was of like you said, everything's done by helicopter, and they were so efficient in getting we were there for when they were taking the drill from the very top of WESTMORE and down to the bottom. But I think the biggest thing is that you're able to see it. You're able to understand it. You can see how these things connect, where sometimes, you know, photos and as good of a job as you do, Ian, and everyone else, sometimes those words and photos don't do it justice. Sometimes you have to see how does it all come together. So really, really excited to get that out in the near future. I think it's to be decided for when that full length video goes, but I appreciate very much for that answer or that question, Bryce. Another question here is from Jackson. And he says, how come the value of Sassy's investments in Galloper, Gander Gold, and Max Power equal nearly the entire market cap of Sassy? Are we missing something?
I'm not really sure how to answer that question, other to say that, you know, it's certainly strategic. This ability to have another means of raising capital, and to have, you know, we did spin out Gander from Sassy, and so, you know, I think it's very, very strategic more than anything else. It just gives the company an option to access to capital in a non-dilutive way, where we don't have to go out to the market to raise these funds. We can, hopefully these companies do very, very well, and we can take opportunities of a good price level within these respective companies, and sell some of the equity position. Yeah.
Yeah, and furthermore to that as well, again, I look at this because this is a company that not only creating content for, this is a company that I'm invested in. It's because I believe in it. And if you look at the fact that those valuations essentially do equal the whole market cap of Sassy, what that's telling an investor is, for whatever reason, in this crazy market that we're currently in, the worst since the 1930s, is that everything you just discussed on WESTMORE and the FOREMORE project and everything in between is almost being valued at $0 compared to those investments. So the upside and the potential upside there is very intriguing to me. That's why personally, this is something that I continue to buy in the market, because I see the opportunity in that. A lot of companies are putting out results. They're growing. They're becoming a better company, but the market is doing nothing with that. That tells you that right now we have a very interesting market where things aren't being valued properly. So the contrarian investor out there can look at this and say, well, is there potential value there? In my biased opinion, I would argue absolutely yes. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I see from that. If I may ask another drill question, then we're getting close to the point where we're going to be moving over to our next webinar. So I can't thank you enough, Ian, for your time. But I really like this question. I'd like to ask it. Jeffrey asks, what would constitute as a breakthrough this summer from this year's drill season?
Well, I think just continuing to demonstrate that these veins have, you know, the gold mineralization, we can demonstrate that the gold does occur subsurface. We certainly indicated that with some shallow drilling in 2021. We've definitely gone a little bit deeper in 2022. And if we can demonstrate that, you know, off the top of my head, if I say we have gold intercepts of good grade at 100 meters below surface, I think that would definitely be a success. And it would certainly speak to the thesis that these veins are gold bearing, as we know they are, but they are indeed continuous. And we can demonstrate as we continue to explore the WESTMORE intrusive that we'll be able to continue to drill these types of intercepts as we go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate very much for you answering that, but also for the time you've taken today for your current investors, for potential investors, finding out a better understanding of what it is that Sassy Gold is doing, the opportunity at hand, but then also having this chance to have this live Q&A where they can have their questions asked and answer it away. So Ian, I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the audience.
Perfect. Well, we're now going to go over to our fourth of 5 webinars. Still 2 more great companies to go. Once again, Ian, thank you as we close out this one here, and we head on to our next webinar as well. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day today.
Thank you.